إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We continue inshallah ta'ala discussing the way by which we can gain a goodly life in this world and in the next. The way by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He promised and guarantee for us that we will gain a goodly life in this world and the next. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He says, من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة. Whosoever does good, whether male or female, وهو مؤمن, and that individual he has Imaan, he is a believer, he has faith, فلنحيينه حياة طيبة, we are going to give him a goodly life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He says about His barakah being distributed, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا, had the people of the village had Iman, had faith, had believed, had the people of the village believed and had taqwa in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ, we would pour upon them, we would have opened up upon them the barakat, the good, the blessings of the heavens and the earth. And as we mentioned about this word barakah, it's receiving the good in that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us, benefiting from that which Allah has given us, and not having those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us being a means for our misery and our punishment, rather a means for our happiness, a means for our prosperity. And this aspect of Iman, or this aspect of having a good life, which is completing our Iman for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doing good deeds, it's something that we cannot run away from. We may strive to gain the happiness in this dunya by other means, but it will not be guaranteed for us. Rather, we are just going to be in mutaqallibat, we are just going to be flipping from one aspect of our life, from one misery to the next. Every time something goes away, there is another thing to cause our misery in this dunya, if we choose to not have Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He promised those who turn away from His remembrance, those who turn away from his reminders, that he is going to make them live a miserable life. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. Whosoever turns away from my remembrance and from my reminders. This word, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي, can be the reminders of Allah. These things that Allah reminds us with, such as the verses that we mention, how to gain a good life. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي, and whosoever turns away from my remembrance, from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worshipping Allah. The greatest remembrance of Allah is the salah and the Quran, the book and the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, whosoever turn away from my reminders and my remembrance, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, he is going to have a narrow, constricted life. That is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many times we live in problems. We have challenges. We are tested. We find misery around us, chaos around us, and we try to solve those problems with worldly means, and we forget the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is our Iman with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And don't be deceived by what you see of anyone, because you do not know the state of their heart and what they may be going through with their heart, and that misery that they may be living within them. And even if a person finds himself or he finds others disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turning away from Iman, and everything in this world is going his way, then he should be warned and be cautioned of the istidraj of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is gradually leading him to his destruction. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ready, he is going to take him swiftly. And in the previous khutbah, we started to mention various aspects of our Iman, our faith, our belief, by which if we rectify it with the other aspects of Iman, insha'Allah ta'ala is going to aid us in having a better life in this dunya. And we continue insha'Allah ta'ala mentioning some of those aspects of Iman. And today insha'Allah ta'ala, one of the aspects of Iman that we would like to deal with is something that has to do with the heart. And that is our love and our hatred for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is from the greatest thing that a believer can be given. And it is also from amongst the most difficult things to develop. And that is when we love and when we hate. We only love and we only hate for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, ثلاث من كن فيه وجد حلاوة الإيمان. There are three things. If it is in an individual, he is going to find the sweetness of Iman. أن يكون الله ورسوله أحب إليه مما سواهما. That Allah and His Messenger is more beloved to him than anything else besides them. وَأَنْ يُحِبَّ الْمَرْءَ لَا يُحِبُّهُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. And when he loves someone, he only loves that individual for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَنْ يَكْرَهَ أَنْ يَعُودَ فِي الْكُفْرِ كَمَا يَكْرَهَ أَنْ يُكْذَفْ فِي النَّارِ. And he hates to return to disbelief the same way he hates to be thrown into the fire of Jahannam. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, من أحب لله وأبغض لله وأعطى لله ومنع لله فقد استكمل الإيمان. Whosoever loves for the sake of Allah, and he hates for the sake of Allah, and he gives for the sake of Allah, and he prevents for the sake of Allah, then his Iman is complete. We see from these ahadith my brothers and sisters, that from our Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order for it to be complete, we must love and we must hate for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And before we continue, we must note that loving and hating, they are two actions of the heart, and they may be manifested on the limbs. When you hate someone or you love someone, the reality of that is in your heart. Hating someone, for example, does not mean that you oppress that individual. Does not mean that you do not do good for that individual. Does not mean that you are not kind to that individual. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forbid you from those who have not fought you with regards to your religion and those who have not expelled you from your homes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not forbid you to be good to them and to be just to them. Rather, you are to be good to them and to be just to them. But on the other hand, we should not have any love in our hearts for those who oppose Allah and oppose His Messenger. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله. That you will not find those people who have Iman in Allah, those who believe in Allah and the last day, showing love to those who opposes Allah and opposes His Messenger, even if they are his own fathers and brothers and sons and his own clan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He described the believers. وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. The people of Iman, the believing men and the believing women, those men with Iman and those women with Iman, بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. They are the allies of each other. They are the ones who love each other. They are the friends of each other. They do not take others beside themselves as close friends, as close allies, as those whom they love and they show affection towards, and those whom they trust within their daily life. That is not the way of the believers, that they will love those things and those individuals that are hated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who are enemies to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّخِذُوا عَدُوِّي وَعَدُوَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ تُلْقُونَ إِلَيْهِمْ بِالْمَوَدَّةِ وَقَدْ كَفَرُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. O you who believe, do not take your enemies and my enemies, the enemies of Allah. لا تتخذوا عدوي وعدوكم أولياء, as allies. تلقون إليهم بالمودة, you showing them love and showing them affection. وَقَدْ كَفَرُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, and they have disbelieved in that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He blamed the believers for this. ها أنتم هؤلاء تحبونهم ولا يحبونكم. That you show them love and you show them affection, and they have no love for you and they have no affection for you. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. What preceded are some verses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He warns us about showing love and affection to those who do not deserve the love and affection of the believers, showing love and affection for those individuals who are enemies to your Creator, to your Lord. And from among that, the aspect of love, or the issue of love and hatred for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that we love and we hate even the things around us for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do not love those things that are hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do not love those actions that are hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those things that are considered sins and transgression, we do not have love for them. And that is indicated in the hadith that we mentioned in the beginning of the khutbah, that from Iman is that individual أن يكره أن يعود في الكفر كما يكره أن يقذف في النار, that he hates to return to disbelief. He does not have any love towards the disbelief and the jahiliyyah, the ignorance that he was upon, those sins and transgression that he was upon. He does not have any love for it, wanting to go back to it. The same way he hates to be thrown into the fire of Jahannam. And what is even worse than all of that are those who hate that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love, and they became an enemy to that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and that which Allah has revealed. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned that their hating of that which Allah love and reveal is the reason why all of their actions will be nullified. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ كَرِهُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأَحْبَطَ أَعْمَالَهُمْ. It is because they hate that which Allah has revealed, so He nullified all of their actions. وَمِنْ أَعْمَالِهِمْ إِيمَانُهُمْ. And from their actions is their iman, their faith that has been nullified, because they hate that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And unfortunately, many Muslims, they are enemies to their own deen, promoting and preaching against the very principles of this deen, like those who preach against the hijab, and those who promote that which Allah hates, like promoting zina and promoting music and promoting everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates. And today we have many people, not only do they love the disobedience, and those who love the ihtifalat of the disbelievers, the holidays and the celebration of the disbelievers, they love those things like those who love what is going to come, and they look forward to it, the Halloween, and then the Christmas, and so on. They have love in their heart for these things, and they promote these things among the believers, and they are ignorant concerning these things, not knowing that these things are from the taghut that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to disbelieve in and to distance ourselves from. You find many Muslims, unfortunately, dressing like shayateen and going around, and they do not know the roots of these holidays that are built in paganism. And even the Christians themselves, they are warning their people against celebrating these holidays. And there are many examples of these things that we can rely on. Among the things that affects our love and our hatred for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who are mudmin, those who are addicted to movies, and those who are addicted to shows, and those who are addicted to sports. The most dangerous things of these things, the most dangerous aspects of these things is not that you are wasting your time. Rather, is that after you are being addicted to these things, you fall in love with these celebrities, and you fall in love with these players, and you fall in love with these actresses, and you go crazy behind them. And when you hear their name, you get excited. And when you see them, you get excited, and you behave foolish, and you have a great you have a great amount of love in your hearts for these individuals. If you are to look into their lives, you see that they do everything that is hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have no aspect of Iman in their life. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned this about the time to come, that the time is going to come when the people will say about this one that he is skillful and that he is smart and he doesn't have any Iman in his heart. And that is the case of all of these individuals that unfortunately we are exposing our youths to, and we are exposing our daughters and our sons and our children to, and causing them to grow up loving these individuals, and we do not teach them about Allah and His Messenger and the companions of the Prophet so that they may love these individuals instead. Instead, they are loving those who are known for zina and fornication and music and sporting and drinking alcohol. All of these things negate our Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us in having love for Him and His Messenger, and loving for the sake of Him and hating for the sake of Him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us steadfast upon the straight path, and to give us a goodly life, and to aid us in having Iman, and aid us in working good deeds. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. وصل اللهم على نبينا محمد وسلم وأقيموا الصلاة.